After War Gundam X fits into a strange category of being separate from the Universal Century timeline, yet it's told in a way that mainly appeals to fans of it. I guess in that regard it's similar to Turn A Gundam. Both Turn A and Gundam X are essentially alternate universe conclusions to many of the prior anime in the franchise. In my opinion, Gundam X is slightly more accessible to new viewers, whereas watching Turn A wouldn't make a whole lot of sense considering most view it as development of its original creator and not just a standalone story. The only thing you really need to know about Gundam in order to understand X is what new types are, and that's a very simple explanation. New types are humans born in outer space with an extra sense that gives them psychic abilities. Depending on what series you watch, new types could be symbolic of the empathy and unity required for the advancement of our species, or just crazy powers that sometimes make mechs go Ultra Instinct. Personally, I'm a fan of the symbolism, but when it starts to expand beyond clairvoyance, you lose me. The mechs are already enough. Thankfully, Gundam X features one of the best implementations of new types I've seen, so it wasn't a deterrent for me. Now that you know about new types, let's move on to the story. The setting of Gundam X is easily one of my favorites from the entire franchise. It takes place in a UC alternate universe where the war took a catastrophic turn as numerous space colonies crashed down to Earth, extinguishing 10 billion lives. 15 years later, new cities have been built and humanity is beginning to thrive once again. Although the war is over, life isn't without its struggles thanks to raiders pillaging their towns using scavenged mobile suits. Think of Gundam X as Mad Max with mechs because you have raiders or vagabonds behind the wheel of massive armored vehicles going to war with each other over discarded military equipment. The story follows Garrett, a 15-year-old boy who lived most of his life fending for himself. Throughout his years, he's honed the skills necessary to survive. Basically speaking, he's a badass who can walk right up to your mobile suit and kick you out of its cockpit. Though Garrett has the experience to make money piloting mobile suits, he prefers to sell them and live a quiet, solitary life. One day, Garrett's lonesome existence is turned upside down by a mission to rescue a young girl, Tifa, from her kidnappers. As the plot thickens, he discovers that his contractor is the real villain and the supposed kidnappers were the ones who actually saved her. This event becomes the catalyst that throws the story into motion as Garrett reluctantly joins the Freedom, a hover vessel filled with scavengers commanded by the infamous war hero Jamil. Jamil's goal is to travel the world freeing new types who are enslaved or manipulated for their powers, as well as extinguishing any remaining embers from the past war. I appreciated the variety of antagonists in Gundam X because it displayed a believable post-war apocalyptic environment. Some fought for profit, some for survival, and others simply because ending the war didn't end the mentality that created it in the first place. There's always the risk of starting new wars for old reasons. Each era of Gundam anime is slightly different from the last. In the 80s, Gundam took an abysmal look into the horrors of war. They developed their characters well and then had them brutally murdered, leaving the survivors with traumatic scars that will never heal. In the 90s, the mainline series shifted its gaze away for cool mechs and exciting battles to become the main focal point. Gundam X is kind of the best of both worlds because it shares much of the same creative talent as Gundam Wing, so the mechs are awesome and the battles are exciting. It also manages to incorporate one of the more palatable anti-war themes the franchise has to offer. I know war's bad, everyone knows it, but sometimes it feels like the morals in Gundam outweigh the viewer experience and it becomes emotionally exhaustive. Gundam X, on the other hand, takes a much more balanced approach to war by primarily displaying how our differences are superficial and can sometimes be set aside for the sake of peace. This is a crucial element for plot progression because some of the antagonists eventually become allies. Which ones? I won't show or tell because that's a spoiler. What I will say is that some of these baddies get great development and can really win you over. However, we aren't so lucky to have all of the antagonists be so dynamic. Some of them are sadly one-dimensional cartoon villains. Despite some of its annoying villains, I think Gundam X makes up for it by having so many likable characters who actually receive development. I'd consider many of the characters and their interactions with each other to be in my top 20 of the franchise. I thought Garrett had an interesting backstory growing up alone in this post-apocalyptic world. This negatively impacted his interactions with the Frieden crew because he's used to being a lone wolf and teamwork just isn't in his wheelhouse. The growing love between Tifa and Garrett is also enjoyable because it was so innocent and heartwarming. Jamil is basically their version of Armor Ray who took an incredibly dark turn. Although it sounds like he should be the powerhouse that negates any threat, he struggles to pilot a mobile suit due to his debilitating PTSD. I also enjoyed So and Roy, two mercenaries hired by Jamil. They appear to be pretty bland at first due to their guarded personalities, but they really open up in the second half and actually became my two favorite characters. Gundam X equally develops like 10 characters, and in the end, I like them all, even though I initially disliked half of them. I'd argue that Gundam X tried to develop far too many characters. In doing so, it sacrificed the character depth that could have otherwise been achieved. I like the direction that they took, but there's not a single character that I thought couldn't be developed more. Aesthetically speaking, Gundam X clearly falls in line with the other 50-episode Gundam anime from the 90s. I mostly compare it to Gundam Wing considering it was created months later and shared some of its creative talent such as mech designers, character designer, and animation directors. I loved how they integrated mech designs from previous anime with a twist. It's easy to see how some mobile suits were heavily inspired by Zaku, Cubile, or various mobile suits from Gundam Wing. I really appreciated their level of creativity in these mobile suits. It's just a shame that the series isn't long enough for them all to be appreciated. The GX9901 has a unique feature because it's one of the few Gundams equipped with a weapon of mass destruction. It's got these solar panel looking things on its back that unfold to collect radiation that's beamed down to Earth from the moon. It basically just deletes everything in its path. I thought this was pretty cool, but it's kinda conflicting when a show features such strong anti-war themes but the protagonist evaporates hundreds of people with the press of a button, but I guess that's the cost of war. You can't make friends with everyone. The animation is also what you'd expect for a 90s Gundam, but in my opinion, it's much better than Wing because it didn't reuse footage as often. At most, they recycled some attack animations. Although the battles weren't as intense or gritty as 8th MS Team, I don't hold that against it because I see them both as being two different brands of Gundam and two different tiers of production quality. Gundam X is more about fast-paced action, lots of explosions, and mobile suits flying around and cutting each other in half. Typically in Gundam anime, mobile suits get one upgrade and that's it. Gundam X utilizes its post-apocalyptic setting by incrementally upgrading its mobile suits, which added a nice touch considering all of the spare parts they must have lying around on a salvage ship. I felt this was another factor that kept the fights feeling fresh. The main problems I have with Gundam X is that it's a little too ambitious and it's structured in a way that risks representing good ideas poorly, which turn people off before they understand what they're even watching. After watching 8th MS Team last week, I wanted to drop Gundam X around 10 episodes in. Of course, I finished it, but I wasn't that impressed. After a day of letting the anime sink in, I realized that I misunderstood it and didn't give it a fair chance, so I started over and I enjoyed it much more my second time around. I believe my initial dissatisfaction was not a unique experience. Even the Japanese lost interest, which caused it to be cut short by 11 episodes. Although it has a pretty good ending, it's easy to see that the pacing is ramped up during the final arc. I believe if it had better written villains and more thorough planning, then they would have enticed more people to see it through to the end. My initial impressions were that the series was nothing but a bunch of bland characters and rescue missions. After all, Tifa gets kidnapped like 6 times. Although the plot progression and a few shallow villains are undeniable shortcomings, the character development becomes a casualty because the aforementioned flaws tend to eat away at your patience, resulting in overlooking the development that's already there. Minnie had a similar problem with Cowboy Bebop because it also uses a slow but gradual characterization method. The difference is that Bebop had a much more exciting and diverse plot with fewer long-term characters that featured a staggered introduction. Gundam X, on the other hand, dumps most of its characters in your lap in the first few episodes and uses a development format similar to painting a wall, one evenly distributed microscopic layer every few hours. Due to this, it's easy to confuse its abundance of slowly developing characters with boring characters. I remember the exact moment when I realized the cast was more complex than I had given them credit for. That was episode 15, which is devoted to Roy and So. Up until this point, I thought they were just background characters. However, they are just hired mercenaries in a post-apocalyptic world. Why would they trust their employers enough to open up? Episode 15 focuses on them away from the Freedom, where they can truly become themselves, and it's easily my favorite episode in the anime. I can't blame people for dropping Gundam X after 10 episodes, and especially not for wanting to rewatch an anime that they didn't like. All I can do is properly set your expectations so that you can appreciate the anime for what it is. I think if you set your expectations at the level of other 90s Gundam TV series like G Gundam, Wing, and even Turn A, then you'll be impressed. Overall, After War Gundam X is an uncut gem that I'd love to see remade as a much longer anime. It's a slow burn that's not going to be for everyone, but if you're patient and open-minded enough, then I think it's a great experience, especially if you're a fan of Gundam Wing or Universal Century. I give Gundam X an 8 out of 10. I did something new this time around and made a graph for my ratings of each episode during my rewatch. This isn't how I calculate the final score, it's just for the purposes of gauging quality and consistency, so you can have an understanding of any good or bad pockets you might encounter when watching. If you'd like to see this in other reviews, leave me a comment. Gundam X also has 2 manga series that's created after the anime. One is called Gundam X Under the Moonlight. I dropped it after a few chapters because it had nothing to do with the original characters or plot. There's also another Gundam X sequel manga that contains the same characters, but information on it is limited. Either way, if you've read either of these, let me know how they turned out. Although I can't recommend the manga, what I can recommend are these 3 anime. Starting off, we have Gundam 8th MS Team. If you're looking for a great story with amazing characters but are limited on time, then check it out. It's only 12 episodes long. Next up is G Gundam. If you like the over-the-top battles in Gundam X, then you'll love G Gundam. It's basically Dragon Ball Z with mechs. Lastly, Tekkaman Blade. It's not really that similar other than it's a mech, but it's awesome and I wanted an excuse to mention it. Thanks for watching. What did you think of Gundam X? Please leave a like and share the video with a friend so more can experience the wonders of anime without being spoiled. I'll see you next Friday with another anime review.